Have you ever sat down for a nice, relaxing morning listening session only to become dissatisfied with your improper volume setting? Don't let this happen. Oh! Ben with Noble X Stereophonic here with another fantastic product. Just kidding, I'm not going to be doing an infomercial here, but I do have a pretty cool product to talk about. This is a really simple tweak that you can use to add IR remote control to basically any vintage receiver. So if you're interested in seeing how this thing works, stay tuned, we'll check it out. This product has a really annoying design flaw. The power LED is excessively bright, and I needed to address that before I move forward with the review. So that's what I cover first. If you're not interested in that and you just want to see how to plug it in and how it works, just skip ahead using the chapters. Let's take a peek at this thing. It's like a wall wart power supply. The unit itself. Remote with batteries, and a manual. So looking at the manual, what interests me the most is the technical specifications section. So we have max input level 1.65 volts. I'm assuming that's 1.65 RMS. Max output level 2 volts. That's not a whole lot. So it looks like the way that this is configured is to be an attenuator for line level sources. So they've got it drawn with 3 different sources here, goes into the box, gets attenuated down before it goes out to a power amplifier. Now the reason this is important is because it kind of eliminates the pre-out main-in connection method. Most vintage receivers, the pre-out jacks that are available are going to be able to deliver well over 1.65 volts RMS, and it could possibly overload this unit and cause some distortion. So we're going to be using probably the tape loop connection method instead. Before we end up connecting this to a receiver, I want to do some basic testing just to look at the specifications and figure out what's inside of this thing. So let's go ahead and plug in a power supply. Holy cow, that blue LED is bright. Before I go too much further, I'm probably going to add an inline resistor to this to dim this down. The mute LED is probably going to be fine. Let's grab this remote and see what that mute LED looks like. It doesn't actually feel that bad. And these little chiclet buttons. All right, let's throw in the batteries. All right, let's see what this indicator, holy cow, that blue is so bright. Oh, that's the mute LED. Let's check mute. The mute is actually not that bad, so I probably only need to compensate on this blue. If I were using this, that's unacceptable. It's just way too bright. Let's open this thing up and see if we can fix that. Okay. QC pass. Looks like the original resistor is 1K. I'm going to try to pop this SMD part off the board and fire this up and see if the LED turns off. Yeah, I think I found the right resistor. So now I just have to experiment. So my decade box only goes up to about 90 to 100 k ohm. I need a little bit more resistance than that, so I'm going to just try some fixed resistors at various values and see if I can get this where I like it. So this is 220k. Now we're getting somewhere. It's hard to tell on camera, but that's just about perfect. Still blinks. I think that'll do fine. I'm going to tack that in. Moment of truth. All right. Now my mute looks too bright, but I'm not too worried about that. Let's make sure the flash still works. All right, now that the LED isn't burning out my retinas, we can go ahead and give this thing a test. Now, of course, you could just cover the LED up with a piece of electrical tape instead. So the whole reason that I'm looking at this device in the first place is I've got a customer that has a Pioneer SX1250 that I just fully restored for him. And he likes to have it connected to his TV. So he asked if I could find a way that we could add remote control to the SX1250. I didn't want to do any internal modifications, so I started searching this type of product. And this came up on a recommendation from the Skylabs YouTube channel and also from a gentleman that runs a channel called Vintage Audio Review, and I'm actually going to be referencing some of his test data later on in this video. But to start out, let's just do a baseline test on this, feed a signal into it, and see if it does what it's supposed to, which is attenuate a signal remotely. For the setup here, I'm going to take a signal out of my signal generator and feed it into the MultiComp Pro. And then I'm going to take its output and feed that into my Sencor PA81 analyzer. MultiComp Pro is fully maxed out. I'm going to go ahead and turn on a 1 volt RMS input signal and unmute. We can see that it gives us a little ramp up, and if we look at the PA81, it's reading out in the 1x mode right at 1 volt RMS. So it's not adding any gain, it's just acting as an attenuator. If I grab the remote and volume down, it's raising and lowering both channels simultaneously. And if I push mute, it immediately cuts the signal, and what's nice about this is when we unmute, it's going to ramp. So it gives a nice slow ramp up, which is kind of a nicer way for an unmute to work. So I really like that. So fundamentally, it's doing its job. Let's take a quick look at a square wave and see how that looks. Pretty good. Yeah, it looks like it doesn't alter the square wave as we adjust the volume. And let's take it to that maximum rating, 1.65. 1.65. Still looks clean. Let's see what happens when we exceed the specification. Might need to range this. change this down. Oh, we can see already it's clipping. So let's see if we can figure out exactly where this starts to clip. I'm at 2.25 volts RMS. So it can do a little bit more than the specification says, but that's definitely going to limit us on where we can plug this thing in. Regarding frequency response, the square wave looks pretty darn good. And if we reference the video and data from Vintage Audio Review, he does a frequency response plot, and it looks like it's got less than 0.1 dB deviation. So it's not really coloring the sound or altering the signal all that much. So all in all, this looks like a good proof of concept. I think it's time to hook this up to a receiver and see how it does. We're looking at the back of the SX1250 that I just restored. I'm going to go ahead and pull these pre-out main-in jumpers so we can take some measurements. I'm going to take the same input signal that we were using with the MultiComp Pro, and I'm going to feed that into the auxiliary input. The signal gen is set for 1 volt RMS with a sine wave. I've got the receiver set to aux. I'm going to plug ground in there, and then the right channel pre-out here. And then I'm just going to raise the volume control. So we're seeing the volts AC rise. We're at 1 volt RMS there, and I'm at about 60% on the control. So this is simulating kind of a typical line level source. Let's take it up. So with the volume control maxed, I'm at almost 7 volts AC. So that's not going to really be an ideal voltage relationship for running the MultiComp. So that's why we're going to use the tape loop instead. So for this next test, I'm going to use the cable that we had plugged into the PA81 before, and I'm going to plug that into the pre-out of the SX1250. Test signal on auxiliary. For the MultiComp Pro side of things, we're going to use tape 1 here. The record is our output signal, so I'm going to connect this cable to the output, and that's going to go to the input, the MultiComp Pro, and then from the output, we're going to go into the play jacks. Okay, let's see if this works. I'm going to power on the SX1250. Right now it's selected on auxiliary. I'm just going to raise the volume control till we get a signal here. So right now it's working like a conventional receiver. If I mute and unmute the MultiComp or change the volume, nothing's going to happen. But if I take the tape 1 switch and then engage the tape monitor, now I've got remote control. So this is kind of the best of both worlds. It allows you to use it when you want to have remote control, but if you want to just run it as clean as possible, as if it wasn't even there, you just flip up the tape monitor and you're good to go. So this is how you can add IR remote control to basically any receiver with a tape loop. Let's see how this thing functions in the real world. So for the next series of tests, I'm going to use a simple noise generator plugged into the auxiliary input of the SX1250. The MultiComp Pro is currently plugged into tape loop 1. So first off, I want to talk about setting up the proper gain structure. So we're going to take the MultiComp Pro and volume up until the LED stops blinking and it's solid. So now it's all the way up. Next step is to start up whatever signal source you're listening to, tuner, turntable, whatever. In this case, we're on auxiliary. And I'm just going to turn up the volume knob until it gets to the maximum level that I want to use for that listening session. Then we switch in the MultiComp Pro. You notice how there's really no change. And at this point, it operates as if we're turning the volume down. The reason we want to set it up this way and not set the volume after this is somewhere in the middle is, check this out. If I take this and I raise it up, I'm controlling volume fine with the MultiComp Pro. But if I come over here and flip this switch, I'm going to get blown out of my seat. So it's always best practice to set your maximum level on the receiver itself and then only use this to turn down the volume, if that makes sense. Next up, let's talk about some source considerations. So I'm plugged into the auxiliary input, my tape monitor is on, but I can access all of these other inputs as well. So if I wanted to listen to the tuner, for example, I've got volume control here like normal, and that goes for turntable, AM, whatever. So all my regular line level sources can be used with the volume control. The problem is when you get into plugging into multiple tape loops. So in this case, I'm going to plug the signal generator into tape 2, and let's see what happens. So we have our signal there. Let's try to control the volume. And nothing. The reason this doesn't work is because of the internal signal routing inside of the SX1250. So in this specific receiver, I can't run the second tape monitor and have it go through the first and all work the way we want with the volume control. So you have to kind of be careful. Some receivers might have some sort of dubbing feature or like a record out selector or something. You may be able to get your tape inputs to go through the other tape loop, but in this case it doesn't work on the SX1250. But luckily it has an adapter switch, which is kind of a like universal effects loop that happens after the tape monitors. So in the case of the SX1250, we can plug the MultiComp Pro into the adapter and get both tape inputs. So let's test that out now. So I'm activated on tape 2, bring in the adapter, and there we go. So now I can use tape 1 and tape 2, auxiliary, and all the rest. So in the case of the SX1250, there's a nice convenient place to put a device like this that doesn't really interrupt any of the regular function of the receiver. So the bottom line is you want to know going in how many line level sources you have in your system. You might have a Bluetooth streamer, CD player, tape deck. If you have all of those things, just make sure you understand how your specific receiver operates and that you won't have certain inputs that the volume control won't work on. Now let's talk a little bit about power considerations. So right now I have this plugged into a switched outlet on the back of the SX1250. So when we power on the receiver, the MultiComp Pro comes on as well. And one of the interesting things about this device is it seems to remember its volume level. So I'm going to max this out. So now it's all the way at the top. We can tell because the LED has stopped blinking. Okay. If I power off and power back on, try to volume up, it's already maxed out. The volume down it goes. So it's able to remember its last setting. I don't know how it does this, if it has some sort of supercapacitor or if it saves it in memory before it gets powered off. I don't know if you can trust that after like days of use, but it's just a nice feature that it seems to remember its volume level at power off. One thing to keep in mind with this power supply is it is a switch mode supply and it can generate some noise. So depending on your receiver, having it plugged in right on the back here may cause interference, especially on AM and FM. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you add this into your system and you're noticing spurious noises that have never been there before, try moving this to a different outlet further away from the receiver and see if that helps. Now it means that the MultiComp Pro would just stay powered on all the time. So that's up to you if you want to run it that way. In the Vintage Audio review write-up, he noticed that this device does add some distortion, and that's something that I wanted to check here on my end as well. So to finish up the video, we're going to take the SX1250 back to the bench, and we'll do an A/B comparison with and without the MultiComp Pro and see how much distortion it adds to the system. I have the SX1250 hooked up to the distortion analyzer. The low distortion oscillator is connected to the auxiliary input of the SX1250, and then we're looking at the output across an 8 ohm dummy load and monitoring the result here on the Panasonic. I'm outputting about 12 watts right now into 8 ohms, and our distortion is around 0.010%. This is the SX1250 by itself. I have the MultiComp Pro maxed out. Let's switch it into circuit. So you can see that it's obviously adding some distortion, and even maxed out, there's a very slight decrease in the output level, so it's not maintaining that absolute level coming into it. But we can see our distortion definitely goes up. It's about 0.003%, seems to be about what it's adding to the system. Let's go ahead and attenuate this down with the remote control. I just want to get to around 1 watt. Somewhere around there. So the MultiComp Pro, when we're at that level, is around 0.035%. Let's use the SX1250 volume control to take us down to 1 watt. Yep, so it's consistent at that level as well. The MultiComp Pro is adding a little bit of distortion, but it's negligible in my opinion. Thank you so much for stopping by the channel and checking out this video on the remote IR volume control. If you enjoyed this content, I invite you to like and subscribe. If you're interested in purchasing one of these for yourself, check out the link in the description. If you liked the part of the video where I tore this thing down and did the LED modification, you might enjoy my Patreon page. I'm building a library there of exclusive content that focuses on my day-to-day activities in audio repair. If you'd like to contribute to the channel but you prefer to stay on platform, I have YouTube membership available as well. Thanks again, we'll catch you on the next one.